Muito bom. Dando sequência, então, nós temos o prazer de convidar o novo chairman do Iasb, que assumiu em julho deste ano, o professor Dr. Andreas Barckow. Welcome, Andreas. Thank you for your participation. Please, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Fernando, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be speaking to you today. Let me first point out that it's always a pleasure to talk to our Brazilian constituency. You are a very important stakeholder to us. Your feedback matters, and your input into our ongoing work is really highly appreciated. And had I had the opportunity to address you in Portuguese or in Spanish as my predecessor Hans would have been, it would have sounded even better. But unfortunately, Bomnia is probably the only thing that I'd be able to address you today. So bear with me in English. We do have a slide deck, a few slides that have been prepared, and I will just show those with you. So if we can go to the first slide, please. Everybody is obviously interested in getting to know a new chair, and many people think probably of me being similar to someone in a big company, a new CEO coming on and rolling out his or her new strategy. Now, I have to disappoint you to a certain degree, or reassure you, depending on where you stand, because a new chair doesn't automatically equate to a completely new work program. Our board, as you will remember, is quite busy in pursuing an agenda. The agenda is still full with a lot of items, and you see those that we do have on this slide. Some projects we have already started, and we do have ongoing deliberations. Some newer ones that we will be starting very soon, like business combinations under common control, once we have received the feedback from the current consultation. On this slide, you really see that we are still on some of the very big projects indicated more in the two buckets, research projects and standard setting. And we do have some narrow scope projects, and the ones that you see on this slide, like lease liability in a sale and leaseback and lack of exchangeability, are obviously those where we already have put forward outstanding consultations. That being said, rest assured, more is coming your way. We will soon be having 3 more exposure drafts that the board will be issuing. One on the first stage of the PIR to IFRS 9 in the phase of classification and measurement, which is a request for information, and 2 exposure drafts to address some issues that have been brought to our attention through the IFRS Interpretations Committee, being the distinction on current, non-current liabilities with covenants and supply chain financing. So these 2 are imminent and will be published at the beginning of the next quarter or towards the end of this month. If I can then turn your attention to the next slide. We do have a few big consultations that are underway, and this is probably an unnecessary reminder, but I shall point this out because these consultations are really important to us, and they are important to us in probably 2 ways. Firstly, they signal that we do have an ongoing work program, and work is continuing and it probably will be continuing at least well into the next year, if not even longer. So that may already give you some impression as to what the board will be doing in the nearer and upcoming future. But then there is one project in particular, and that is the one that has the stripe to the bottom end, which is our agenda consultation that I would like to really bring to the fore at this stage. Every 5 years, the IASB consults its constituency and asks it for what we should be doing within the next 5-year program. And as you would appreciate, probably every constituent does have his or her own hobby horse. So there may be issues that are of particular importance in your jurisdiction, in Southern America more broadly, or in some other parts of the world. And the appetite may differ depending on what your current issues and your current perceived need is. We, as the board, believe that we should be cognizant and hear all of the feedback, regardless of where it is coming from and who is soliciting it, when we make our final decision. What we surely will not be doing is that we will be stopping our entire existing work program, but we might readjust it, especially for projects where we haven't really started, where something is in the very early stages, because we want to give our stakeholders an opportunity of informing us whether something that they have flagged to us 5 years ago in the last agenda consultation is still of relevance, and they would like to be better informed about, or whether something has now gained more traction and is probably of a higher priority. If that was the case and the view was cast uniformly, that may inform us that probably we ought to readjust. But it's only in those cases, otherwise we obviously are keen on finishing our work program, and that may, for some projects, take as long as 2023, 2024. So the resources that are available for our next agenda will be, in part at least, limited to the resources that are being freed up upon completion of our projects. Some projects, and I just mentioned one other one, being management commentary, is likely to may see a shift in focus going forward. The primary objective of that project was really to update a legacy document, a document that has been published several years ago, but developments have moved on. Sustainability has become a major issue, and we wanted really to reflect those changes that have happened and update our technical document. When the board embarked on that project, it wasn't imminent at all that the trustees would come forward with a very bold suggestion to create a sister board to the Iasb that would be charged with looking into setting standards for sustainability-related financial disclosures. And you will appreciate that if the trustees make that decision, and the decision is probably going to happen in the not so distant future, the trustees are looking into making a decision in October. If that new board comes into existence, it is quite evident that there will be overlap in that particular project with our work. Again, our objective has primarily been to update an existing document, but since we are leaping into areas of strategy, of risk, of ESG, that may certainly be also impacting the Iasb. So it may well be that this will be a joint project for the two boards to go together in the future. So let me quickly just say a few words about the agenda consultation on the next slide, to just say how it ties all in with our time plan. The consultation period runs basically until the end of this month. So if you haven't responded yet, can I please invite you to send us your suggestions up until the 27th of September? And surely we wouldn't mind if there was a slippage of 1 or 2 days, but it would really be appreciated if we could have your comments and your ideas by the end of this month. The board will then be collating all the feedback. We will probably have an education session in October that would give the board a high-level overview as to where our stakeholders are. And then we will be considering the feedback in more detail in the months to come. My expectation is that the board will probably make a hardwired decision within the first quarter of 2022 to set our agenda as we go forward. Let me then use the remainder of that work, of that time that I have available in my slot to discuss a little bit of the priorities as to where I am, what my views are, but also what we have heard already from some of our stakeholders. If I can ask you to turn this to the next slide, please. In setting out the agenda consultation document, the board had asked stakeholders a few questions as to not only please list the technical areas that you would like us to see getting involved, but also as to how much we should be spending our time on developing new requirements or updating existing requirements, how much we should be spending on helping jurisdictions in applying and implementing new requirements, because obviously a few requirements are still on the verge, and how much time we should be spending on both the IFRS for SMEs or on topics like the digital agenda. On this slide, what I would like to stress is that we really should be looking into what's that we must do and which is really up for grabs and where we do have some leeway in deciding what we do. So the must do, and I repeat that again, we are compelled to finishing our existing work program. And as I said before, that may well take us into 2023 and 2024 for some of the bigger projects like presentation, financial statement presentation, and perhaps also goodwill and impairment. I also just said that we certainly want to continue to assist jurisdictions in the application and implementation. This is an ongoing theme, and we heard that loud and clear, that please do not shy away from helping us and assisting us in going further. An area that I haven't mentioned so far, but which of course is important to our standards, are the post-implementation reviews. By our due process, the board is compelled to not just issue a new requirement, throw it over the fence and say, have fun with it, but after a few years, we should really be considering whether our expectations have played out as anticipated. So we are there to ask the question, has the standard worked as we intended it to work? Can we gather feedback? Have there been any new issues that have arisen since the development of the standards? Have there been any unforeseen consequences? And surely we want to pay diligent attention. The standards that I list here with 9, 15, and 16 are the obvious ones. So 15 and 16 have been in operation for a few years. 9 has been in existence for 3 years, absent the insurance entities that are yet to apply it. But you would appreciate that these post-implementation reviews require quite a lot of thinking, of outreach, of feedback gathering. So we certainly want to set sufficient resources aside to do that. In brackets, you see that we already have the PIR on IFRS 10 to 12, the consolidation suite undergoing, and that will obviously also take some time. What we then may do is look into some of the more topical areas, and I list only these 2 here, being intangibles and cryptos, because these have been mentioned to us in various stakeholder fora, like the Advisory Council or the Accounting Standards Advisory Forum, as well as have been mentioned by some other groups that we have been talking to, being the CMAC or the Global Preparer Forum. What we certainly should be taking into account, if the trustees make the decision to erect a sister board, then connectivity to ESG standards will be of utmost importance. We will have to make sure that financial reporting and everything that our board does really has a meaning and ties into any requirements that the other board would set. So we ought together work together and work from the same principles. And digitization, I have already mentioned. Much of our work is still paper-based. But if we look where investors and analysts are, they are talking about AI, they are talking about digitization, they are talking about taxonomies. So surely that is something that we ought to have in our agenda. So let me turn to the last slide to ask the question that you are probably all interested in. Where am I in this? I would say that my greatest point of attention is to make and ensure that our work remains relevant. That's a very broad and bold statement, but believe me, a lot of energy has to go into this. Because many people see financial reporting as a commodity, and you could say, yeah, we have a suite of standards, they seem to be reasonably working well, tick the box, let's move on. I don't hold that view, because I think that there are always developments on the horizon that may or may not have an impact. Who had thought about cryptos 5 years ago? Who had foreseen the rise in intangibles 10 to 15 years ago? So the environment changes, and I would hold the view that if we really want to react in a sensible and appropriate manner, we should be constantly scanning the horizon for upcoming new trends and always assess whether that may have an impact on financial reporting, and not wait until the problem has hit our desk, but really start to becoming more proactive so that we really have a solution at hand when the problem hits. This is what I call the scanning the horizon. The digital arena you already have seen me mentioned, and I cannot enforce enough that digitization is very important. Now, the one thing that I should be making clear here, that there is a narrow sense by many that just think of a taxonomy when they talk about digitization. I would go far deeper than that. A taxonomy is a necessary ingredient, but it is certainly not sufficient in thinking about how to proliferate and to distribute financial information and how to digest it. I think we probably have to do more in that space. And then obviously communication is key. If we are doing something, don't wait with the communication to the very last end and park communication with our final press release only. We ought to communicate thoroughly and continuously about everything that we are doing and explaining it and help everybody to understand it. Probably more directed towards you and other stakeholders. Be cognizant and be realistic of what you asked of the Iasb. Our resources are not endless. We surely would like to do as much as we can, but we also want to do it very diligently. We want to aim at high-class, high-quality products, but that takes time. And we also want to make sure that we really listen closely to all what our stakeholders have to say. So be mindful of what we can do. Then secondly, that's more for us. We should be cognizant about the frequency and the amount of change that we are imposing. I'm absolutely aware that the last 2 years have been a real burden for all of us, not just health-wise, but also from a technical end. We have really thrown a lot of documents out at you, and I hope that we can reduce the number of documents that we are seeking simultaneous consultation on. But I think if you want us to act quickly, that's the price probably that you have to pay. And that brings me to my last point in here, which is timeliness. Some people believe that we are acting far too quickly. Some believe that we are acting not quickly enough. So they are looking at having an answer right there tomorrow. Quality takes time, and I'm taking quality very, very seriously. But it's not just that I take quality for theoretical purposes and academic beauty. I think we really ought to ensure that what we are coming up as a potential solution would fly in practice. And when in doubt, I, for one, would hold the view, rather be pragmatic and not be stubborn and too tight with concepts. In the end, we all want to have a sensible and appropriate solution that works. With that, And Andrew, can I hand back to you? And thank you again very much for having me. Thank you.
Very, very good presentation, Andreas. Thank you so much for being with us, and success in your new journey. Bye.